Verses 18 to 28. They are commanded to be kind to the Levites. Did they feast with joy? The Levites must feast with them, and rejoice with them, v12, and again, v18, and a general caution, v19, take heed that thou forsake not the Levite as long as thou livest. There were Levites that attended the altar as assistants to the priests, and these must not be forsaken, that is, the service they performed must be constantly adhered to. No other altar must be set up than that which God appointed, for that would be to forsake the Levites. But this seems to be spoken of the Levites that were dispersed in the country to instruct the people in the law of God, and to assist them in their devotions, for it is the Levite within their gates that they are here commanded to make much of. It is a great mercy to have Levites near us, within our gates, that we may ask the law at their mouth, and at our feasts to be a check upon us, to restrain excesses. And it is the duty of people to be kind to their ministers that give them good instructions and set them good examples. As long as we live we shall need their assistance, till we come to that world where ordinances will be superseded, and therefore as long as we live we must not forsake the Levites. The reason given, v12, is because the Levite has no part nor inheritance with you, so that he cannot grow rich by husbandry or trade. Let him therefore share with you in the comfort of your riches. They must give the Levites their tithes and offerings, settled on them by the law, because they had no other maintenance. They are allowed to eat common flesh, but not the flesh of their offerings, in their own houses, wherever they dwelt. What was anyway devoted to God they must not eat at home, v13, 17. But what was not so devoted they might kill and eat of at their pleasure, v15. And this permission is again repeated, v20-22. It should seem that while they were in the wilderness they did not eat the flesh of any of those kinds of beasts that were used in sacrifice, but what was killed at the door of the tabernacle, and part of it presented to God as a peace offering, Leviticus 17:3, 4. But when they came to Canaan, where they must live at a great distance from the tabernacle, they might kill what they pleased for their own use of their flocks and herds, without bringing part to the altar. This allowance is very express, and repeated, lest Satan should take occasion from that law which forbade the eating of their sacrifices at their own houses to suggest to them, as he did to our first parents, hard thoughts of God, as if he grudged them, thou mayest eat whatsoever thy soul lusteth after. There is a natural regular appetite, which it is lawful to gratify with temperance and sobriety, not taking too great a pleasure in the gratification, nor being uneasy if it be crossed. The unclean, who might not eat of the holy things, yet might eat of the same sort of flesh when it was only used as common food. The distinction between clean persons and unclean was sacred, and designed for the preserving of the honor of their holy feasts, and therefore must not be brought into their ordinary meals. This permission has a double restriction. They must eat according to the blessing which God had given them, v15. Note, it is not only our wisdom, but our duty, to live according to our estates, and not to spend above what we have. As it is unjust on the one hand to hoard what should be laid out, so it is much more unjust to lay out more than we have, for what is not our own must needs be another's, who is thereby robbed and defrauded. And this, I say, is much more unjust, because it is easier afterwards to distribute what has been unduly spared, and so to make a sort of restitution for the wrong, than it is to repay to wife and children and creditors what has been unduly spent. Between these two extremes let wisdom find the mean, and then let watchfulness and resolution keep it. They must not eat blood, v16, and again, v23 only be sure that thou eat not the blood, v24, thou shalt not eat it, and, v25, thou shalt not eat it, that it may go well with thee. When they could not bring the blood to the altar, to pour it out there before the Lord, as belonging to him, they must pour it out upon the earth, as not belonging to them, because it was the life, and therefore, as an acknowledgment, belonged to him who gives life, and, as an atonement, belonged to him to whom life is forfeited. Bishop Patrick thinks one reason why they were forbidden thus strictly the eating of blood was to prevent the superstitions of the old idolaters about the blood of their sacrifices, which they thought their demons delighted in, and by eating of which they imagined that they had communion with them. They are forbidden to keep up either their own corrupt usages in the wilderness or the corrupt usages of their predecessors in the land of Canaan. They must not keep up those improper customs which they had got into in the wilderness, and which were connived at in consideration of the present unsettledness of their condition. v. 8:9 You shall not do after all the things that we do here this day. Never was there a better governor than Moses, and one would think never a better opportunity of keeping up good order and discipline than now among the people of Israel, when they lay so closely encamped under the eye of their governor, and yet it seems there was much amiss and many irregularities had crept in among them. We must never expect to see any society perfectly pure and right, and as it should be till we come to the heavenly Canaan. They had sacrifices and religious worship, courts of justice and civil government, and, by the stoning of the man that gathered sticks on the Sabbath day, it appears there was great strictness used in guarding the most weighty matters of the law, but being frequently upon the remove, and always at uncertainty. They could none of them observe the solemn feasts, and the rites of cleansing, with the exactness that the law required. And, those among them that were disposed to do amiss had opportunity given them to do it unobserved by the frequent interruptions which their removals gave to the administration of justice. But, says Moses, when you come to Canaan, you shall not do as we do here. Note, when the people of God are in an unsettled condition, that may be tolerated and dispensed with which would by no means be allowed at another time. Cases of necessity are to be considered while the necessity continues, but that must not be done in Canaan which was done in the wilderness. While a house is in the building, a great deal of dirt and rubbish are suffered to lie by it, which must all be taken away when the house is built. Moses was now about to lay down his life and government, and it was a comfort to him to foresee that Israel would be better in the next reign than they had been in his. Verses 29 to 32. They must not worship the Lord by any of those rites or ceremonies which the notions of Canaan had made use of in the service of their gods. v. 29-32. They must not so much as inquire into the modes and forms of idolatrous worship. What good would it do to them to know those depths of Satan? Revelation 2:24. It is best to be ignorant of that which there is danger of being infected by. They must not introduce the customs of idolaters, because it would be absurd to make those their patterns whom God had made their slaves and captives, cut off, and destroyed from before them. The Canaanites had not flourished and prospered so much in the service of their gods as that the Israelites should be invited to take up their customs. Those are wretchedly besotted indeed who will walk in the way of sinners, after they have seen their end. Because some of their customs were most barbarous and inhuman, and such as trampled, not only upon the light and law of nature, but upon natural affection itself, as burning their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. v. 31, the very mention of which is sufficient to make it odious, and possess us with a horror of it. Because their idolatrous customs were an abomination to the Lord, and the translating of them into his worship would make even that an abomination and an affront to him by which they should give him honor, and by which they hope to obtain his favor. The case is bad indeed when the sacrifice itself has become an abomination. Prov 15:8. He therefore concludes, v. 32, with the same caution concerning the worship of God which he had before given concerning the word of God, ch 4:2 You shall not add thereto any inventions of your own, under pretense of making the ordinance either more significant or more magnificent, nor diminish from it, under pretense of making it more easy and practicable, or of setting aside that which may be spared, but observe to do all that, and that only, which God has commanded. We may then hope in our religious worship to obtain the divine acceptance when we observe the divine appointment. God will have his own work done in his own way.